Let's rock, wreck, and roll, everyone. Welcome back, my Fossil Fighters. Today we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite games, Fossil Fighters Champions. A game that I feel is a perfect example of how a sequel can top and vastly improve upon its predecessor. The original Fossil Fighters is, in my opinion, a pretty good game, though it's heavily flawed. And we have talked about this a good bit at length in a previous video. The link below is for that video. I highly recommend you check that out to get a lot of my background thoughts, as we're not really going to be mentioning it here, as they have been mentioned prior and gone into greater detail there. And as mentioned, I think it is far from a perfect game. There are a number of flaws that the game does possess, and that's really what we're here to talk about today with regards to Champions. However, before we get into that, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you guys are new. You guys keep everything here going on, and thank you guys in advance for that. But, back to Champions. Champions actually addresses and fixes all of those issues, while itself being a heavily distinct game that is still noticeable as it carries over many things from the original. In fact, the story of the original and Champions have no connecting points. Outside of a small mention at the start of the game that the technology is an improved version of the first game, the events of the first game, and Vivisaur Island as a whole are not brought up and have no bearing on the actual story. Even into post-game, there is no connecting threads outside of returning character cameos. And cameo battles that, even if they weren't from the original game, would still have been filled by some other characters. They play no real role in the game, allowing it to be very distinct from the prior game. The only thing that shows the games are in the same timeline is a DLC mission fight against Dinosaur, where he vaguely mentions and alludes to the protagonist of the first game. And if we're really being honest, the whole reason that side quest is in the game, and it's a downloadable content game, side quest, is just so the Dinarians can be added into the game in some way, shape, or form. The Ganache brains are not present in the game, so it really is just to shoehorn in the Dinarians. Story thematics and nature are starkly different, as well as even the battle format and gameplay systems have been heavily overhauled for the better. There have been numerous player convenience features added, while overall lengthening the game's main story in a good way to the point of not feeling like padding, and there is a true post-game this time around. Changes for the plot are a shift from a more space alien-focused narrative where the Dinarians are using humans to try and get their technology back so they can colonize Earth, with a much more sympathetic antagonist, I don't really want to call him a villain, in Dino, where even though he is doing things that are objectively horrible, there is an underlying reasoning that we can all get behind. And the true big bad of the game being Ganache, who comes out of absolutely nowhere, to a much more basic setup in this game, where it's really just a bunch of numbskulls trying to close down the park, before it's revealed that you've actually been playing for an evil zombie dictator the entire time, and that the guy you thought you were working for is actually the antagonist. Initial antagonist, at least. Both games have an Act 1 villain that takes a back seat, and while I do applaud the subtlety of the original Fossil Fighters, Champions makes Zonga Zonga known from the very beginning, but it's never obvious he's the one pulling the string and that he is actually Joe Wild West. Joe not recognizing you at the start of the game is very easily explainable, as it's been 2 years in-game, and he's a very big, important person in the fossil fighting community. He sees people all the time, and he's not going to remember 2 people he ran into just on a mountainside. He probably does that all the time, considering it's basically his job is to, well, Vivisaurs. Even as Don Boneyard, the real Joe Wild West does not immediately recognize you. He somewhat hints at your familiarity to him, but the subtlety is still kept in that it hints that Don Boneyard is someone familiar with you, even if he can't place it. As for battling, mechanically, the system has been completely revamped, and far much for the better. The single attack zone, 2 support zones, and the escape zone has been changed, to the point of actually a significantly more diverse battle system. There are now 3 attack zones, 3 support zones. 2 Vivisaurs will be in one zone at any one time, assuming all 3 are present, and the other will be in the opposite zone, with a spacing in between each Vivisaur. If 2 Vivisaurs are in the attack zone, any support effects will be split between the 2 of them evenly turned down. The addition of the new ranging system makes the positioning of Vivisaurs far more important than just give support effect Vivisaurs to the support zone. There was a bit of this in the original Fossil Fighters, where if Vivisaurs were in the support zone, they wouldn't receive a damage debuff when attacking the opposing attack zone. However, these Vivisaurs had naturally very poor stats to begin with, and weren't really doing all that much damage to begin with. It was roughly on par with dedicated Vivisaurs being in the support zone attacking. Whereas this makes Vivisaurs at certain distance have positive or negative defensive and offensive benefits. Long-range Vivisaurs want a maximum spacing between them and the opponent. Short-range Vivisaurs want to be right up close, and mid-range want to be at that, well, middle ground. It gives a whole new layer to team construction beyond just make support effects good. Personally, I am not a fan of the Super Revivals. However, I will not deny that they are a quite interesting mechanic. Super enhanced and more powerful versions of Vivisaurs, complete with completely different abilities, support effects, and moves. It's a lot more interesting than the, well, very similar Mega Evolution mechanic Pokemon would make over a year later. Yeah, Mega Evolution came after Super Revivals. They also managed to dodge the bullet of power creep in an extremely skillful manner, something that few games, even as the aforementioned Pokemon, have struggled to do. Great Vivisaurs like Berto and Chimera have been added. However, the old faithfuls like T-Rex, Tricera, and Spinax are still heavy hitters that can compete with them, as well as even formerly weak Vivisaurs such as Shanshan actually receiving a little bit of a buff to compensate. While it by no means makes Shanshan great, it certainly makes it a bit more usable. The new fossil types, the Colossal Fossils or the Curious Fossils, and the addition of the Buster Points, Buster Probes, and Time Extenders make the fossil uncovering process a lot more diverse, something that, as we mentioned before in the previous game, was quite monotonous, the gameplay loop being go out, grab fossils, bring them back, uncover, and leave. While yes, that is still kept, there is a lot more differing dynamics now. There are random events that can happen, there are easy ways of just wiping out and clearing entire fossils, and especially things like the Colossal Fossils, you need to have things like Time Extenders cooperate with allies, as you can have a co-op mode for this, and overall, much more thought needs to be going into clearing the fossils off if you want to succeed, which I applaud. Vivisaurs now also learn all of their skills purely by level now, reducing the grind by completely eliminating it. Back in Fossil Fighters, the original game, you had to go grind a crap ton of money, get all of the sonar upgrades to get every fossil, and then had to go out and find every single fossil. For some of the rare Vivisaurs, this was a pain, especially a pain. Whereas now, you just need to get the skull and level it up. And now, the best addition, the masks. Before, in the original game, they were just cosmetics, and they did absolutely nothing outside of helping with one side quest. Now, the masks have a very functional addition. They allow you to locate specific fossil types. They can either be specific elements, so if you want to find only neutral Vivisaurs, the white mask, actually the pink mask I believe is what it's called. If you want to find only heads, there will be the head mask, the arm mask. This makes locating and filling out your fossillery so much easier by eliminating any fossils you do not want to be uncovered. You will simply not find. It doesn't make them more commonly found, it makes you exclusively encounter those or miraculous fossils, or jewel rocks and wondrous fossils. Overall, yeah, very good change. Because some of us remember spending 5 hours looking for Mihu. I'm still not bitter about that, not at all, we'll give you that impression. And now, post-game. An actual post-game. It isn't just max level rematches with various characters throughout the story, and maybe a few new side quests. There are many more side quests, all of which actually do give a lot more character growth, character expansion, and while there are those max level rematches with your old rivals, enemies, friends, and yes, you can refight Zonga at max level, there is an additional thing in this, and that is the tournaments. These are specific Vivisaur restricted tournaments that really amp up the difficulty and test your abilities as a team composition person. And I love this. It dials up the difficulty. The games are known for being quite easy, at least Fossil Fighters, the original especially, was known for being quite easy, and there are elements of the game in Fossil Fighters Champions that are quite easy. If you wanted that difficulty itch scratched, these tournaments will put the nails to the blackboard and make you squirm. It almost means that this is a complete game. It is. As far as characters go, Pauline, Todd, and Rupert are vastly improvements on the sort of archetypes that Holt and Rosie were back in the original. The former, who I never really felt was a rival even back when I first played, and especially now, and the latter, who is really just annoying. It's also, I think, worth mentioning, at least personally, because Rupert is one of my favorite characters in gaming, and his whole arc is something I can actually relate to. The going from purely focused on winning above all else to really wanting to go back to why they enjoyed the first place. That really found it fun. And it isn't just strictly about winning. I can relate with that, and I think that was very well done. All of these are fantastic expansions, and what was great before was kept. Act 1 Fake Out with a bad guy, loved. Act 2 True Big Bad Reveal, fantastically done, even better this time. It's just this time, it is handled far, far better. But there is one thing above all that I feel shines the most. The humor. It is quippy, but it does take itself serious enough to have a genuine heart, but also not taking itself seriously enough to be able to joke about its own scenarios and setups. Which is a very, very difficult razor's edge to balance, and it does it expertly. It does everything a sequel should do. Take what the predecessor did and make it better while retaining its own identity. And that, I think, is the crowning achievement of the game. The retention of its own identity. It doesn't feel like this is just the same thing done again. It does feel vastly different because it is vastly different. And I can go on about this game for hours. I have. This script was about 20 pages longer before I edited it down for your convenience. You're welcome. And the massive Let's Play we did of the series, I think, goes to show I have a lot to say about this game. If you would like to see more and in greater detail about very specific things, I highly recommend you check out that Let's Play. It will be linked below, as well as in the end cards at the end of this video. You will not regret it. It is a delight of a series. Okay, seriously, I'll cut the rambling here. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to leave a subscribe, leave a like. It really helps support the channel. And I'd like to thank my members of the channel, the Metal Crew. Have a nice day. Let's rock and roll, everyone. See you guys next time.